вообще можно быть к этому готовым? Мы действительно готовы к ядерной войне?
Ну, с военно-технической точки зрения мы, конечно, готовы. Они у нас постоянно находятся.
Well, Vladimir Putin has given another interview to state media. This comes hotly on the heels of his State of the Nation address last month, where he repeated claims that an escalation in Ukraine would potentially see us descend into World War III and nuclear fallout. He's repeated those warnings today. They're fairly chilling, they're fairly stark, but they're not new. He's repeatedly warned the West that he has nuclear weapons, he has the capability to use them, and that his nuclear troops are on constant standby. It's a lot of saber rattling, and the West have been used to this ever since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. It's something that military intelligence and analysts across Europe will obviously take heed of and bear it in mind. But it's very much rhetoric based around the context of the presidential elections which are taking place in Russia later this week.
And is there a sense that as Ukraine has ramped up its kind of drone attacks and it been making some headway in terms of a technical attempt to take the fight to Russia, that maybe there's a response from Putin that's to say, look, we're serious and this is not going to be the defense that you've managed in the first couple of years of this war. We're getting serious now.
It's quite clear that Russia are starting to make battlefield gains. So I think Putin's eye is very much on the West and the West's reaction to that. What will they do next? The key question is, do they increase the amount of weapons that they're sending to Ukraine? There's huge question marks over that. We've seen the French President Emmanuel Macron suggest that troops actually should be deployed to Ukraine. That would be the starkest of escalations that we have seen. And I think Putin is very mindful of that. And so each time he mentions the use of nuclear weapons, it is a warning to the West not to cross that red line. If I can just quote one of the sentences that he gave to state media this morning, he actually says, the nations that say they have no red lines regarding Russia should realize that Russia won't have any red lines regarding them either. He goes on to say, weapons exist in order to use them, and we have our own principles. He's essentially laying down his red line for the West.
He is the person who's doing the saber rattling. There is no excuse for that. That's irresponsible of him. And actually, all that needs to happen to resolve this is he needs to drive back east and get out of a democratic country that he decided to invade 2 years ago. And that is the way to bring this whole thing to a conclusion. But it is absolutely irresponsible of him to talk about nuclear weapons in that way. Everyone agrees. It's just unnecessary and escalatory.
These are very dark times for us.
This interview was only hours before Leonid Volkov was brutally beaten on Tuesday. On the same day as he spoke to Reuters, the longtime aide of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was allegedly attacked with a hammer in Vilnius, Lithuania. Police fenced off his home and were seen searching the grounds late at night. A former Navalny spokesperson said someone broke a car window, sprayed tear gas in Volkov's eyes, and hit him with a hammer. Volkov spoke about Russian leader Vladimir Putin to Reuters before the attack.
So historically, Putin is weak because his regime is not based on institutions, on any solid base. But in the moment, this dying dinosaur is very strong and can cause enormous damage. That's what we've seen in the last 2 years in Ukraine, and that's what we've seen in the situation of the murder of Alexei Navalny, and we have absolutely no doubt, it's beyond reasonable doubt, that it was Putin's personal order to kill him on February 16th.
This comes just after a recent attack on an ally of Alexei Navalny. Leonid Volkov was attacked with a hammer in Lithuania. Is there a sense that both in terms of a nuclear arsenal, but also in terms of his agents on the ground, that Putin is setting out his stall to clamp down on opposition wherever it may appear?
I think this is very much a symptom of his leadership. We've seen this repeatedly over the years. I don't think it's anything new. He's targeted his political opponents. He's targeted military leaders who have failed him. I lost count of the number of Russian leaders who have fallen out of windows or been killed in car crashes. So I think this is part of the Vladimir Putin book of leadership, and this is how he controls Russia. So in terms of the attack on Leonid Volkov, it's very, very similar to what he's been doing to any of those who challenge him or seek to challenge his authority in Russia. And we saw it with Alexei Navalny when he was poisoned a few years ago, and obviously his death very recently, which the West have put very firmly at Vladimir Putin's door.
And how do you see the upcoming elections, particularly the US election, as playing a part in how Putin strategizes over the next weeks and months?
It's obviously clear that Putin will have a very close eye on the US presidential elections. He previously, when Trump was president of the US, he had meetings with Trump. Trump was quite complimentary of Putin. So if Trump does succeed in winning another term in office in the US, it's possible that he may well push for less military aid being sent to Ukraine and a closer alignment with Putin, because he's very fond of those hard men style leaders. You know, look at Kim Jong-un and Putin. So I think Putin will have a very close eye on the US presidential election, and his preference would obviously be a Trump regime.
Вообще можно быть к этому готовы. Мы действительно готовы к ядерной войне.
Ну, с военно-технической точки зрения мы, конечно, готовы. Они у нас постоянно находятся в состоянии боевой готовности. Это первое. А второе, и это тоже вообще признанная вещь, наша триада, ядерная триада, она является более современной, чем любая другая триада. Таких триад только вот у нас, да, американцев, на самом деле. И мы здесь продвинулись гораздо больше. У нас она более современная. И вся ядерная составляющая. В целом по носителям и по зарядам у нас примерный паритет, но у нас более современная. Но это знают все. Специалисты все знают. Но это не значит, что мы должны меряться количеством носителей и боезарядов. Но знать об этом нужно. И те, кому нужно, повторяю, экспертам, специалистам, военным,